Here we go. Here we go. Guys, this has been a long time coming. The day has finally arrived to share my testimony. I'm excited for this one. It's going to be something very different that I've never done. I'm not used to doing the long form YouTube videos, so this is something different for me, but this is how I came to Christ. So, where my story begins is off where I grew up in a single parent household. I only have my mom and my sister in my life, and they have really helped my life change a lot. But my dad has not been in my life, and my dad has been in and out of jail. He's not been in my life. So I grew up without a father, having that father around me. I saw him whenever he hopped out of jail, but he would go back to jail because he would do the same pattern with selling drugs and being a drug dealer and stuff like that. So I didn't have my dad around to really teach me how to be, a son and how to be a man and how to actually lead and do all the stuff. So it definitely impacted me. But then I found out later on when I was in first grade that my teacher was seeing how I was struggling so bad to learn and stuff. They contacted my mom and said that he's having a hard time hearing what's going on in the classroom. And so my mom found out that I had hearing loss. And so hearing loss, what hearing loss basically is for those who do not know, is that hearing loss means that you can't hear at the full percent as a normal person would. So let's say someone with normal hearing has 100% hearing, right? Then I would only have 50%. In my type of hearing loss, I only have 50% hearing loss, meaning that I can still hear people if they're talking, but it's not at 100%. It's only at 50%. And so wearing hearing aids, these are hearing aids right here. These are hearing aids. So wearing hearing aids actually helps me be able to hear the rest of that 50% that I do not have. And so wearing the hearing aids makes my hearing go from a 50 to 100. And so that was definitely a struggle to grow up with wearing hearing aids, especially since over the years they have gotten better. They've gotten even smaller now, but the ones that I used to wear as a child was very big. They had a big wax foam right here, and then it would be very big on the back. And so wearing hearing aids and all of that really did make my self-esteem go down. I did not feel confident. I felt like, why am I wearing these big things in my ears just to hear? And so fast forward, I got pulled out of first grade and I was homeschooled all the way up into sixth grade. And mind you, I grew up, I never had no friends over at my house. It's not that my mom was strict or whatever, she would have invited that. I just grew up as a child where I was very shy, I was very timid, I was very fearful. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I was just very introverted. I did not want to talk to nobody, to no kids, no adults. I was nervous, so shy, so fearful. So now here I am going into sixth grade in 2020 of January, and I'm 12 years old now. And now I go into my first day of school. I had history class as my first class. So they walked me through the whole showing me around the school and stuff like that. And then they brought me to my class. I walked in there, I see everybody staring at me. And so like the teacher shows me where to sit. I go and sit down in between. So there's one girl in front of me and there's one girl behind me. And so as I'm in between these two girls, I'm very awkward. I'm very shy. I'm not saying nothing. I'm not really just, being comfortable. I'm very awkward and stuff because no one really taught me how to interact with females and how to talk to a girl, stuff like that. So it was very awkward at that moment, at that time, and I was thinking like, I want to go back to the house. I want to just do homeschool. Like, why did my mom put me in public school again? And so I got done with history class. I got done with history class. Then this boy comes up to me. He talks to me, and then this is where I meet one of my buddies that would be with me throughout the rest of middle school. And so he comes up. to me. He introduces me to the class, to who's around me and all this stuff. And so I cling to him. I don't have no boundaries. I don't, try to go and find friends. I just cling to whoever talking to me. And I was just very timid, very weak, very shy. So he could see that. And that's what really set me up to be bullied, to be taken advantage of, and stuff like that. And so I did not know that I could just walk away and say, I don't have to be your friend. I just clung to him as anybody who would give me attention. I just clung to them. So I get done with that. I'm hanging around him. Then I meet his other buddy who's way taller than us. And he starts to pick on him, mess with him, and call him all sort of names and cuss at him and say that you're worthless and this and that, peasant, and all this stuff and stuff. So I could just see that these people were not very good influence from the beginning, but I still stuck with them because I just thought that they were just playing around and that's what it meant to just be a friend. It's just to put each other down and stuff. So fast forward to the day, I'm in science class and I'm packing up my bag, get ready to leave because the bell's about to ring. And these three boys, my classmates, are having a conversation about a man and a woman having sex. And my mom never exposed me to anything that was related to maturity when it comes to sex and marriage and all of that stuff. So this was a shock to my ears, hearing that this is what a man and a woman does. And so my parents never sat me down and had that talk of this is what a male is and this is what a female is and this is what happens to create a baby and stuff like that. Like they didn't have that conversation with me. So I found it out through now these teenagers telling each other about pornography and all this stuff. And so I went home and I had that in my mind, but I had such a just gross feeling like, ugh, that's just nasty and stuff. So I went back to school. I kept going back and back to school again and again. And I was at school for at least, I stayed at that school from sixth grade to eighth grade. And so I started to hang out around those two buddies of mine. And I would started to just be their little supply buddy and say, you know what, hey, do you want candy? Do you want snacks? Do you need money and all this stuff? I started to give them stuff in order for them to love me, to actually talk to me, and to want to hang out with me. Because if I didn't give them stuff, then they wouldn't talk to me and they would just put me down and mess with me and bully me and stuff like that. So, and one of them, the first one who actually introduced me to everyone the first day of school, I clung to him the most because, he saw me and he accepted me. And so he showed me this OnlyFans model on YouTube and she was just doing ASMR, but she was doing just very, you know, sounds and stuff like that. And she was showing her body off and whatever else. And so my eyes just got fixed on that. And what I can say that lust really did to me at that time, that when I started to know what lust really was, is that I was just looking at her curves on her body and stuff like that, and just seeing like the urges from my body to just, look at that and start to get just in such a fluffy, puffy feeling of like, whoa, this feels so good. This is so pleasurable to my mind, to my body. This is so pleasurable to my thoughts and stuff. And so I got introduced to her. Then I went home and looked her up on my iPad, and then I started watching her, looking at her videos, and her doing sexual poses, her making sexual sounds, and all of this stuff. And that's when I started to open that door to pornography later on. And so watching her, looking at her doing all of this stuff, and then that's when I first started to notice that my body was starting to do some reaction stuff. So my body started to do the reaction, and that's when I found out that, well, my body is reacting this way to watching her. And so my friend would always be like, "Yeah, she's so hot and all this stuff," and we would watch her in at lunch and stuff like that. And it was just ASMR and bringing just sexual lusting like sounds into it as well. And she would do like the spin board and all that stuff, but it was just crazy how my mind was starting to go down this rabbit hole of watching this, and my eyes just became addicted to watching that stuff. And so the more I kept watching, the more I just kept getting not satisfied. I wanted more and more and more. And so he showed me something called pornography. And pornography, of course, was and pornography is worse than that. And now I'm watching people full blown having sex and doing all this stuff and laying and sleeping together. And now that's in my mind as a young 12 or 13-year-old, and my mind is just being shaped by that every day. Day and night, I would watch that at the house. I would do that stuff and just pleasure myself constantly every day. That's when I found out that my body could do that and stuff. So I was just pleasuring myself day after day, from sixth grade all the way up into eighth grade, pleasuring myself, watching pornography day and night, up to 3 a.m. watching pornography on a school night stuff. And mind you, my mom did not know that I was doing this. None of my family knew that I was watching pornography. And but I did know that deep down, if I did get caught, it would be bad. So I did have some sort of sense of that this was wrong, but I didn't know why it was wrong. But it would just felt so good though. And so the more I kept watching that, the more I kept feeling good. But the more that I would get those 5 second pleasure releases, I would just feel shame and feel burdened, like my seed has been exhausted, and just feeling all these hormones coming so strongly during those times that it was just burning inside of me. And the more that I kept doing it every day, I felt so good for the gratification at the moment. But then when I would finish, it would just be like, I'm dead. I'm empty. I feel exhausted. I feel shameful and all of this stuff. And so it was just such a heavy, dark time of just so much pleasure, but so much bondage. And that's what really happens when you're doing that stuff. And so I kept doing that more and more. But then I kept hanging around those people and they would bully me and stuff like that and mess with me. And it would just be hard to just manage just going to school because I would be bullied. I would be picked on. Then I started to dress for the looks. Then I started to want to look a certain way. And I did not like my curly hair. I wanted to get straight hair. I was taking the iron. I was literally straightening out my curls. I was burning my hair off. It was so bad that because I just wanted to fit in. No one at that school looked like me. No one at that school had my type of hair. No one at that school looked like me. Really wanted to fit in to be like them. I just wanted to have their type of hair. I was taking the ironer. I was straightening out my hair and doing all of this stuff, and it was burning off my hair and stuff. But I was buying clothes, going to Ross, to Gabe's, to any other store, and just buying all of this stuff because I just wanted to dress to impress. And since I was starting to get into crushes and stuff like that, that one girl did like me in school, and it was during sixth grade that I didn't know what to do. I was so shy, I was so timid, but I did like her though. And it was just stuff like that that I realized that, you know what, I wasn't really understanding what to do because my dad never taught me to talk to a female and stuff. So it was just a lot of struggle just to focus on trying to actually be me, but still like someone. And especially at that age, I did not know what to do. I'm so young and I'm thinking about a crush. I'm thinking about having a girlfriend and all this stuff. And yet I'm watching pornography, so that's messing up my whole view of women. And it's just looking at her for for her flesh and wanting to just sleep with her rather than to actually have her as my girlfriend. I just wanted to have her so I could sleep with her. But since I was so young, I couldn't do that because I couldn't bring her home or I couldn't go to her house and sleep with her because and stuff because I was a kid. And so I never really got to be in a relationship with her because I didn't really want her. I wanted her body because pornography was making it all about her flesh. And so the more I kept just watching pornography, the more it messed it up my view of how I viewed women and stuff like that. So as soon as I kept going to school every day, I still struggled with being bullied. I did not want to go to school. I was saying words that I wanted to unalive myself and do all this stuff. And it was just a lot of dark moments in my life during middle school. It was just very dark. And so when I would come home, I would watch pornography, then go to bed, wake up and go to school and be bullied over and over, day after day. It was like just constantly just warfare, fighting, fighting, fighting. And so when I came to finally 8th grade, I stopped talking to them because they were just being so horrendous, stalking me. They were stalking my social media, commenting on my posts, calling me all sorts of names, cussing me out of my name, and threatening me at school, shoving me and all this stuff. And during all of that time, I did not fight back at all. I just was over there taking it. I was just being passive, being weak. I wasn't really sticking up for myself. I wasn't setting boundaries. I was letting them just control my life. And so the more I kept being around them, and I even asked them one time, "Do you go to church?" And it's like, "Nah, F church," and all this stuff. So it was just a lot of hatred for God. And so I started to actually flex that my dad was in jail because in school, in school, it is cool to flex that, oh yeah, my dad is in jail, he does all of this stuff. And I started to act like a thug. I wasn't doing my schoolwork anymore. I was very rebellious. I wasn't doing my homework. I was failing class. I was skipping school. I was hiding out in the bathrooms forever. I spent all days in the bathrooms. I did not go to class at all. I was just going to school to go into the bathroom. And I was dressing like a thug. I was wearing, like the bandanas. I was wearing the bandanas and all of that stuff and talking like a thug. And my speech, when I tell you, when I was cussing, I was saying the F word. Every word was an F word. Every word was this and this and that. And I was starting to even use God as, F God and all of this stuff. And I was really just starting to take off with my gangster life of being a thug and dressing like a thug and talking like a thug and cussing and doing all the gang signs and stuff like that and wearing all of the blood red colors and all of that stuff. And I was starting to just get into that gang banging lifestyle where it would just be bad. Like I would want to bring ski masks to school and all this stuff and wearing all of this, thug gangish clothing and stuff. And I was just being influenced by them with the pornography and the gang banging lifestyle and all of that stuff. And 2023 hit, my mom started to want to go to church. And mind you, I've never been to church at all. I was always just raised just a normal kid. I never went to church, all of that stuff. And my mom's side of her family is all Christian. So she finally like decided to actually go to church, and then we went to Bethel Church. I remember that my mom forced me to go to church, and I'm glad she did because if it wasn't for that moment, I would not be here at all today. And so she brought me to church. I was wearing big skulls on my shirts. I was wearing death row. I was wearing a big diamond fake chain on my neck. I had ripped jeans and all this stuff. And I walked into church and I was like, they're over here singing. Everybody has good morals. Everybody is so calm. They're so relaxed. They're so nice and polite and all this stuff. And so when I walked in there, it was like, whoa, everybody is so different. I did not, it was like another world that I never been to. And so as soon as I just kept going to Bethel Church and times again where I was like, I did not want to go to Bethel Church. And so my mom would force me to go. And then she signed me up for Bethel Youth. And then I kept going to Bethel Youth. And I would have a bandana out of my jeans. I would have ripped jeans. I would have skulls on my shirts. And then I would have a chain and all of this stuff. And by the time I got to 2023, my appearance was completely different. Back in 6th grade, I had like slick over curly hair. And then in 2023, I had really big ripped jeans. I had skull shirts. I had anything that said just, you know, gang stuff on the shirts and stuff. So, and I had like a big diamond fake chain too as well. And my hair was super long. It was like long almost to my mouth. And I was covering up my eyes and all of that stuff with my hair. And I was even like blocking my hearing aids because I did not want to show my hearing aids. So I let my hair grow out a lot so I could block my hearing aids from being seen in my face and stuff. So I was just there. And I was wearing all black too. I wear it all black. After that first year of sixth grade, I would wear like very button up stuff like that. I would wear some regular jeans and some regular shoes, just more like just being like a regular, average kid and stuff. And then that's when I started to work to watch all of the thug videos of how they would wear, the full track suit and all that stuff, and how I started to watch I started to look at how thugs dress, and they would wear the all one color, all red, all black, all white, all blue, whatever color they would wear that color. And so I chose to wear all black. I always wear the black hoodie, black jeans that were ripped, and some white Air Force Ones. That was my appearance 24/7. I wear that outfit day and night, every day. I was just immersed in wanting to wear all black. There was something about wearing all black that was just drawing me to it. Now I know now that it was darkness. And so the more I kept wearing all of that all black, people started to call me emo and look at me, I'm the emo kid, I'm the depressed kid and all that stuff, which deep down I really was and stuff. And I never read the Bible, I never did any of that stuff. And as soon as I started to go to church more and more, they would hand me a book. I did not know that it was the Bible. I never heard the Bible a day in my life, and we would have Bible studies at youth and all that stuff, and they didn't really talk about God. It was more about the appearance too. I will say that Bethel Church made it a lot more about the appearance because they were addressing with a lot more that the youth were more focused on the appearance rather than the Bible. So that definitely did not help me since I was focused on the appearance rather than the Bible and all that stuff. So Bethel Church had their youth nights Wednesdays. So that that Sunday, I was in the main service with my mom, and this man comes up to us, and he's prophesying, and he's saying that you have all of these knives in your back, and people have stabbed you, they have betrayed you, and all of this stuff. And I remember bawling my eyes out. I was crying in like disbelief because I was like, I never saw this guy a day in my life, and he is literally speaking about everything that I have struggled with that I've never told anybody. Literally, no one knew, not even my mom. And he was prophesying even over my mom and speaking all this stuff. And she was bawling her eyes out and crying because she was going through just such a hard time too as well. And I remember when he got done speaking about our situations, I asked her, "Did you tell that man stuff about me?" She was like, "No, I didn't. I did not tell him nothing about you." And from that day on, I did not expect anything like that. I did not know that was God. I did not know that was prophecy. That's what the Bible called it, was prophecy. I just didn't know how he knew information about me, and let alone what he was really sowing into me, was saying that you know that he was literally preparing me for my salvation from getting saved. That he was preparing the way for God to come to me. And through that prophecy, how he literally prophesied about me having knives in my back, that people have stabbed me in the back. He literally prophesied and said that I have knives in my back and that people have backstabbed me. And I was crying. I was crying in hurt and rejection and pain. And he spoke about my father and all that stuff. And it was just, it was really heavy how God was using someone who was gonna prepare the way for him to meet me. God knew my situation, that even though I didn't know him, he knew me. And when I came after that Sunday, when I came after that Sunday, that's when my mind started to really shift. And then I got involved in their summer youth camp, and it was a week away camp, and I went to this Christian camp, that Bethel was a part of my church at the time, and I was there for a week. My mom was not there; she dropped me off, and so I was there with one of my friends from Bethel Church, and we were there like hanging out. Of course, I was still nervous and all that stuff, but I met two good buddies of mine from there, and they really prayed over me. They really were real friends to me and stuff. And so that 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 summer, that week away at camp was amazing. I was worshiping, I was doing all of that stuff, and I still was worried about my appearance and all that stuff, even though I was at camp. And during that week, and I definitely could see that the Lord was planting seeds that that week at camp. And even though I did not get saved that week at camp, I met two good buddies of mine that really did pray for me, that really did show me how to really be a friend and stuff. And people really started to love on me. I met a good pastor there. He was praying for me and all that stuff. And then I stopped going to Bethel Church after that. And the youth camp did too as well. Is that we were not allowed to have our phones, our watches, any technology device had to be put up and turned in to the first people at the gate. And so I was still struggling with pornography and going a week without being able to look at it or watch it or pleasure myself with it. I found a way to do that without anything. I was in my bunk bed, pleasuring myself in the middle of the night, night, at youth camp. I remember the next day I woke up and felt so much shame. But then that night when we had worship night, I got prayed over, and it was almost like conviction was coming to me. I never had anything like that. And mind you, the whole time when I was in sixth grade in 2020 and in eighth grade, and during that time too as well, when I was on TikTok, I was doing a lot of thirst traps. I was following a lot of Mexican thirst trappers to learn how they do it and stuff. So, and I idolize other TikTokers. I wanted to dress like them. I wanted to sound like them. I wanted to get the same haircut as they did. I was literally becoming a mini version of who they were. And so I started to have a huge following on TikTok with a lot of females hitting me up on Snapchat, and me talking sexually to them and photos and stuff, and them sending me photos and all of this stuff, and being on FaceTime with them all the way up until 3 o'clock in the morning, talking to a new girl every night, every week on FaceTime, looking at them and all of this stuff, and telling them that I have a future to come over there and to marry them and be with them and sleep with them and have kids with them and all of this stuff. And during I was probably 13, 14, 15. And so I would be talking to these girls on Snapchat at night, on school nights, with my red lights in the room and all that stuff, and making all this stuff and going on websites and talking to females and stuff like that, and doing a lot of that stuff. It was a lot of addiction to wanting to sleep with a woman. A lot, a lot, a lot. And I couldn't do it. I was too young. And of course, I never asked my mom to take me over to their house, you know? So it was just desperateness of wanting to sleep with a person. That was my goal, just to sleep with a woman, just to sleep with a woman. And so the more I kept going that whole week, and so the more I was thinking about that at camp, it was just driving me in that urge so bad that when I got done with camp, I was that even though in the midst of that camp week, I was struggling with that, I was able to overcome that. And my friends and that pastor were praying over me so bad that it was like I dropped it. I was having so much fun. I met really good friends. I didn't have to see those bullies at school anymore. And it was like a new beginning for me, especially a lot, a lot. And so after that whole week of camp was finished, and I got back to see my mom, I was so happy. I was filled with so much life, and I remember that she was saying that you look so different, and it was the light of Christ. That's what it was. It was the light of fellowship too, as well. And so after that, that was in July, and so here comes August, and now I have to go back to school, and this time I'm going into high school, and now it is ninth grade, high school, and when I go there, that's when everything gets even more crazier because high school is the next level. And so the same people that I hope to not see anymore is that, mind you, when I stopped talking to those bullies and stopped talking to them and, speaking with them and put a restraining order on them and stuff, we didn't have no contact. So I only saw them when I went back to high school. And that was in 2023. And so when I went to my first day of high school, it was so different. But I knew everybody from middle school was now with me in high school. And so it was a lot more crowds, a lot more bigger school. And so I was just so fearful that I went to the bathroom. I was deep. I was deep into fear. I would be in the bathroom, hiding in the bathroom stall all day, every day. I did not go to class. I did not like to go to class at all. That habit really picked up in sixth grade. Around seventh and eighth grade, I started to hide in the bathroom a lot more. And so I'm hiding out in the bathroom. I'm not going to class. I'm only getting out when it's lunchtime, and then I go into the bathroom or I'm late to class and all this stuff. And so now, everybody in high school, I'm walking around, people are kissing up against the locker and all of this stuff, and I'm seeing a lot more of that. And it started to make me feel like, you know what, it's time to take action in a way where I'm gonna actually be able to have my first physical relationship with a girl. And I was in ninth grade, probably at least 5 or 6 months, and I was so worried about, being. I was very thuggish. When people would talk to me, I would just act very, very hard and thuggish and all that stuff. So eventually, I was sitting at a lunch table, and I had met a few good buddies of school that were not the bad influence of the bullies anymore. Since I didn't have the bullies in my life anymore. I finally decided to stick up, and since I was starting to be a thug and be harder, it was harder for them to control how I was. So I was starting to push back a little bit more and stuff. So the more I kept doing that, the more that they really did leave me alone. I was blocking them, doing all that stuff, and that's when that's when I just didn't care to be around people. I was just by myself. I wasn't worried about being with anybody anymore. And so I still hung out with this one good buddy that was very smart at school. He was not a really bad influence, but he was not the best influence either too. And so I remember more girls in there. They had, like crushes on me. They wanted to go to prom with me and stuff like that. And I just didn't feel like doing that because I was so scared and so nervous that. So one of the bullies that I knew from middle school had liked the girl that liked me. So she rejected him and she wanted to go to prom with me, but then something happened where she went to prom with another guy. And so back then, since I was on that thuggish mindset, I said, "You're a hoe," and all this stuff. So I broke it up with her and we didn't talk anymore. And we never dated, but I just broke it up with the conversation and stuff. So as soon as I got that done, that's when I that's when I just didn't care to be around females or whatever else. And so I was just doing my own thing and stuff. And this girl, she transfers from another school and now she's in my class. And for some reason, she was drawn to me a lot, a lot. And she would hold like the phone up and do like a TikTok with me and her on like the desk and stuff like that. Monday, and then 3 days later, Wednesday, we were in the cafeteria. She sat by me and she was talking all sexually and all this stuff. And the group of boys that were like around me were like, you know what? And that they were, messing up with me and saying that she should be doing this and all this stuff. And so once we got done, she whispered and she said that, do you want to go to the bathroom? And of course, this was like the ultimate day that I was waiting for, is to be able to finally sleep with a girl. In this case, it wouldn't be sleeping in the bed because we're in school. And so we go to the bathroom, and for the first time, she gives me oral sex. And we didn't have sex by the grace of God. I'm so thankful. But when I felt after that moment was so much pleasure, but I felt so much shame that I was like, you know what? It really bothered me. It really bothered me. I felt for the first time the real experience, that it was so different to actually have someone touch me. It was so different. And so she gave me oral sex in the bathroom. And when we got done, I went back to class. We went back to class and stuff. And so, and the reason why I say that I'm so thankful we didn't have sex is that it would have changed my whole perspective, because I didn't want to follow my dad's path. My dad has sex with multiple women and sleep with multiple women. So not not being able to actually have sex with her was actually God's divine protection, because it showed me that God redeemed me from going down that path. That I say this all the time: if the devil can't get you on the same road as your dad, he will get you through another way. And that's what he tried to do with me. He tried to get me on that same path of sleeping with women. As my first girl, this would be my first girl that I would have sex with. But by the grace of God, that did not happen. Only oral sex happened. And so later that day, I go home and I'm just thinking about it in my mind. It feels good, but it also just feels trash too as well. I'm telling you, this stuff looks good, but it really devastates you. It makes your mind just lose that purity of the mind. It really does. And so the next day I go back to school, and my first class is biology, and the whole room is filled with animals and all that stuff. And one of the school board people come into the classroom and they escort me out, and it was very serious. Like he was playing no joke with me. He was very serious, but he was very tall and strong too as well. And so he brought me to the office, and now the female officer is there, and now she's telling me that the girl that I had oral sex with has now spread it all over school. And while while she was doing it, she also video recorded too as well. And it was on her phone too as well, as if it was on mine. And it was on her phone as well as mine. And so she spread it all over the school, and that's how it got reported to the, school board too as well. And so now I'm there with the female officer, that even though I was there at the office, I had to pull out my phone, hand her the videos. But the previous day after that had happened, that night I would have transferred the photos to another app, or another, or to my iPad, but I didn't. It was only on my phone. So when the officer told me to pull up the photos, it was only on my phone. And so she deleted it off my photo app, and that was the only time I had it on there. So I didn't have an opportunity to recover it or anything like that. So by the grace of God, by God's sovereign power, He made sure that those were fully erased. And so she didn't charge me with anything, luckily, by the grace of God, because if it was different, then I could have went to jail. So I could have had the exact same situation as my dad. I could be in jail. I could have had sex with a girl and do the same thing he did, and that would have been the fourth generation me. But it didn't happen, and so I left there. I was put into ISS, and I would also be suspended from school as well too. And then when I was suspended, after that day, I was never put back into school. And after that day, I never went back to high school, and I became homeschooled once again. And that shame and stuff just stuck with me a lot, a lot. And I haven't talked to that girl at all ever since. And I pray that she finds God. I pray that she would come to know Him, and and that what the devil meant for evil, God turned it around and used it for His testimony of mine. And that no matter what He used, a woman, a girl, whoever, God turned it into my testimony. And I'm so glad that I did not go down. I was right there, going down that path as my dad. But God saved me. He intervened. He intervened with that generational cycle. And so now I'm at the house, and that's when it pushes me over the limit to see God. And I'm just praising God. God, thank you that I did not have sex with her. Thank you, Lord, that I did not go to jail. Thank you that I did not go to jail. Thank you that I did not go down the same road that I would talk about and see how bad my dad was. Be like, you know what? My dad is a piece of trash. He's in jail. He sleep with multiple women. And yet, look at me. I'm doing the same thing right there on the edge of that. But yet, God, by His divine power, intervened and stopped that cycle from happening right there at that moment. And I'm so thankful for God for that every day, because I could have got her pregnant and had a baby with her, and my life could be ruined and be in jail. She's pregnant after having sex with her in the bathroom. That's what could have happened. Same cycle right there. As if I was 15, 16 right there. That's 15 years old right there. And so, and so, I did not go back to school. I stayed home school. And now it was a year later. It was February of 2024. And I went to the same camp, but this time it wasn't the summer retreat, it was the winter retreat. So I was just there for the weekends. So the winter retreat only lasted Friday to Sunday. And it was February 15th through the 17th, that Friday and Sunday. And when I say that Saturday, I came up to the pastor and he said, raise your hair up because I can't see your face. Like, that's how long my hair was. It was down here, like to my eyes. And I started to bawl my eyes out and just cry to him and say, Pastor, I'm struggling really bad. I need prayer. I need help. And he was the same one I met at summer camp in 2023 before I went into high school. And so that Saturday night, we had another worship night session, and we were in the main auditorium. And I remember just crying. I felt such a heavy, heavy pressure. I felt I felt anxiety, I felt fear, I felt depression, I felt pornography, I felt all of this stuff. And I went to go get the youth leader, and he brought me to the back room. There were two of them. I was in there in the back room. All of the kids were out there in the main room worshiping at the stage, at the altar. I was pulled to the very back room, like the room where they had all of the supplies and all that stuff. And I was on my knees. I was just nodding. I was crying, bawling my eyes out, saying that I've been rejected, I've been hurt, I've been just backstabbed, I've been bullied, I've been messed with. Like, why does God have me here? Why do I keep coming back and keep going and nothing's happening? And I was just crying so bad. I was crying so bad that in that moment they were just praying over me and stuff, and they stopped and were trying to just figure out what to do. But I was on the floor just bawling my eyes out. They did not know what to do anymore. And I remember I just in my head I was like, God, come to me. Use me, Lord. Save me, Lord. Change me, Lord. And God supernaturally came down, and he radically took pornography, he took lust, he took all of that brokenness, that sadness. He took all of that and he literally supernaturally overnight he took off of all of this weight I could not describe to you. There was so much heavy weight lifted off of me. All I could feel was a cloud of fluffy light. God supernaturally healed me of super God God supernaturally delivered me from a spirit of pornography, a spirit of lust. God delivered me from demons. I felt demons physically manifest out of my body. And all I could feel was this supernatural presence. And all I could describe it is the Holy Spirit. It was so white. It was just so angelic. He was just so white. The robe was so clear. The robe was so whiter than snow. The crown was golder than gold. And the holiness of him came down and met me so hard. I did not cry. I did not do none of that. I was suppressing my feelings so much that I never really cried. And that night, I was bawling my eyes out. And still today, I will never get over the gratefulness of God of how much He has saved me. I could have been in jail. I could have ended up and gotten her pregnant. I could have ended up being a father right now. But God made sure that He would be my father. And that He came down and He showed me His father love. I was adopted that night. I no longer was an abandoned child left by my earthly dad. I was adopted by my heavenly father, in who I cry out, Abba, Father. And that's what I did that night. I cried out, Abba, Father. And my father came down and he delivered me. And he made me his beloved son. And God supernaturally brought me to his love. His love beyond anything. God brought me to his love beyond anything. And from that night forward, God set me free from depression, from anxiety, from cussing, from swearing, and from wearing all black, and from being fatherless, from being rejected, from being bullied, from being hurt, from being used, and from 3 years of addiction of pornography. God set me free from that in one night. And now my whole life is not out of obligation to serve God through religion. I didn't find God in religion. I found Him in the holiness of the Father heart. I found Him on my knees at the end of myself, not wanting to be here anymore. I found God when I was at the end of myself, and He gave me a new life. I went from death to life. That's what the Bible says. I went to death. I went from death to life, and life more abundant now. And now my whole life is Christ's life. I don't follow God out of religion. I don't follow God out of man's word. I don't follow God because I'm forced to. I follow God because I choose to wholeheartedly. I choose to follow God day and night. That I know people struggle with. That I'm not saying that just because I don't cuss anymore that I'm better. But I'm saying that God supernaturally took that away from me. I don't cuss anymore. I don't have to cuss anymore because there's no power in that anymore. Because I know, I know what that was like. I know what was cussing was about. I know what was being with multiple women. I know what it is to cuss and swear, and I know what it is to have drunk alcohol. I was getting drunk and stuff like that. And I know what it was to finally get with a girl and feel the pleasure. It did not satisfy me. I know what it was to have all the clothes in the world. I know what it was to have all of the TikTok followers and the Instagram girls commenting and saying that I'm fine and I'm hot and all of this stuff. I know what it's all about. I know that life. I know the life of pornography. I know the life of lusting after a woman. I know all of that. And I don't want that anymore. I gave that up. I follow God because I love Him and that He is my Father and that God has so much more in store for me and that God has brought me to who you see now, making these videos. That's why my love for Christ is to bring people to the truth. And that's why now my and that's why my heart is to bring people to Jesus. Come to Jesus, not to man, not to religion, not to tradition. Jesus never said, follow me and be a Christian. He said, follow me and be a disciple. We need to obey the Bible before we obey any words of men. Man does not have the ultimate opinion. God has. And so I'm not here to point you to a man. I'm here to point you to the perfect man, Jesus Christ, who is the living God who came down on this world and who died for me and rose and gave me life and gave me this life as a young man who is about to be 18. That's why I serve the God I serve, because he came down and he met me that night supernaturally and he set me free from all of that bondage. And I no longer am an abandoned son. I have a heavenly father and he is blessing me with so much. He's blessing me with impacting you guys. He's blessing me with starting a clothing brand. He's blessing me with becoming a leader. He's blessing me with becoming a true man of God. He's blessing me with actually leading daughters and women to him and becoming Proverbs 31 women. Yourself is a dead end. Only God is the way. Only Jesus is the way. And I'm preparing the way for his way. And I'm preparing the way for his way. And so I am a believer of the way. I am a believer of the way. And that's where God has me. He has me for his kingdom. And so I want to say this. This testimony might not be how structured as I think it should be, but I just hope it really does impact you. You watched all the way through. And I just want you to know that I want to make sure that I always obey Christ out of obedience, not performance. I'm not chasing the applause of people. I'm chasing the applause of the God who came down to me. And I just want you to know that God can use God. God can meet you where you are. Come as you are. God truly loves you. He loves me so much. That love is available for anybody. Give up yourself. Surrender to God. And he will meet you. Come to the end of yourself. Because Jesus really does love you. He loved me so much. And I pray that my life would be the evidence of that there is a loving the Creator, the lover of the Creator, is coming through me to you. This is what God's heart looks like. He doesn't judge you, He calls you. He doesn't condemn you, He convicts you. I pray that this testimony has impacted you and has showed you the heart behind what God has transformed me into. To have the Father heart of God. I am preparing the way for his people to him. and that God has so much in store for me. The clothing brand, to spreading the gospel, to being his disciple, to showing women that they're valuable and showing men that they're no longer bound, and to shifting this culture to the kingdom. And that God has made me into a leader. He made me into a man of God to lead. I'm no longer bound to the bullies. I'm no longer bound to them. I forgive them. I forgive you. If you're watching this, I forgive you. Thank you for making me who I am now through God. And I thank God for using you so I could get to Him. Because you helped prepare the way so I could see my God, serve Him. I'm no longer weak. I'm no longer bound. I'm no longer what people say that I am. And what the enemy meant for evil, God will use for his good. And those bullies, females rejecting me, the cops, whatever else, God used you so he could get to me. And so I thank you, Father God, by your grace and by your glory, Lord, that you're the true living God and that no one is coming to save me because you've already saved me, God. You've already saved me. I am so thankful that those people, even though they were used by the devil, that they align with God's plan to bring me who I am today. God has so much more. This is not the end of me. This is the beginning. And I wanted to share that. That is my testimony, and God has so much more in store for me. This is not the end. This is the beginning.